Welcome to Stories We Love. Stories We Love is about stories we love. We bring you extraordinary people, situations, or circumstances that will remind you of how much good there is in the world, warm your heart, open your mind, and inspire you in new ways. I'm your hostess, Karen Lorre. To get the full playlist of Stories We Love, go to storieswelove.com. Actually, storiesweloveshow.com. There you will find all the episodes and maybe a few bonuses. We interview people who truly care and are making a positive difference that benefits this gorgeous world and its amazing people, and who remind us that even as just one person, we have much more power than we can imagine. I'm so very happy that you are here. Stay tuned. And today we get to have the opportunity to speak with someone that I adore and who's a brilliant woman, Donna Marie Cozine Mills. So Donna, first tell us a little bit about you and why we're here.
Great. Well, thank you for having me, Karen. I'm so grateful for you and to be on your show today, The Stories That We Love. I am Dr. Donna Marie Cozine. I am an author and leader, an executive coach, and a speaker. And I just think that schools need to be joyful. And in 2012, I decided to create a school that was based on the foundation of joy. And 9 years later, that school is still up and running. And I'm excited to share stories about how we were able to accomplish that.
Wow, I love that, because joy is such an important part of life. So what made you want to focus on joy in education, especially as a superintendent? That's not what supers usually focus on, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So interestingly, it was my children. My children were 3 and 10 months old, and I was thinking, where am I going to send my daughter to school? And simultaneously, around 2012, the Common Core curriculum came out, I think 2010 or 2011. And it was a little more rigorous than normally we had been doing in the States. So people were just trying to cram more ELA and math into the school day. And the way that they did that was pulling the arts out. And I knew specifically my daughter, who is now 12, was not going to do well in a program where she couldn't be creative and have a creative outlet. So I decided to create my own school that was based on a foundation of joy. And I created an arts integrated elementary school. It started in 2014 with 194 students and 32 staff members. And I grew it to 506 students, K through 6. And 97 staff members. So the idea took off. I had a lot of people supporting me, and it is one of the most joyful schools you ever could visit.
Oh, I feel tears and chills, and it's so exciting. Kids need to have fun, and art is so important, and so many other things. I love that. So talk to me about what impact joy has in schools. Like, how does it impact the kids, and how does it impact the teachers and their grades and all of that stuff?
That is such a great question, Karen. I think imagine if you spent 8 hours in that situation that is devoid of joy, what it would feel like to you. Joy in education is not a nicety. It is a necessity. It's something where children, young adults should enter a school and be surrounded by love and be surrounded by joy because they spend so much of their time there. You know, think about what we hear adults who are at jobs that they hate and they get burned out. We don't want to burn out our children. And the way to ensure that doesn't happen, is to create schools that are joyful. Now, someone said to me recently, how do you talk to superintendents about joy? They don't have time for joy. And I thought, my goodness, well, you talk about what comes from joy. And what comes from joy are engaged students who are reaching their academic potential. You have teachers who are happy and not leaving your building. So you have increased retention of staff and students. And you just have a culture where everyone feels invested and feels valued
Mm.
And isn't that what isn't that what we want every school to be? So for people who are like, oh, we don't have time for joy. Okay, well then don't think about it as joy, but think about it of all the wonderful things that come from having a joyful school.
I love that. I mean, I'm just going to probably sob the whole this whole interview. I love it so much. It's so beautiful because kids need to be valued and to feel safe and to feel loved. And I can imagine it would just be so beneficial for them in terms of their family life too, and in terms of their ability to retain information and to understand things. Because when you're stressed out, you cannot think straight. You can't even see straight. I don't know if anybody's ever tried to find keys when you're stressed. You can't see them. They might be right in front of you and you can't see them because your eyes lose focus, they get too focused, and stress focuses you in, whereas joy opens up your periphery, and then all of a sudden you go, oh, there they are under the table, boom. So I really love what you're doing. And how do you help schools and leaders increase the joy?
I'm going to guess that in 1 second, but I want to share a statistic with you and your viewers. Before the COVID pandemic, before the Great Resignation, 47% of new teachers left teaching and in their first 3 years of teaching. So
Wow.
even before the pandemic happened, we had a problem in the US with teachers leaving. What I think the millennials have right is if it doesn't feel right with work-life balance, they're going to find something else. And in the districts that have the most underserved and underrepresented children, 71% of superintendents don't last more than 3 years. And that revolving door causes so many issues for the schools, the organization, and the children. So the reason school or joy is so important in schools is because it keeps people there. It makes people feel connected. It's building those relationships. So what I do is actually pretty simple. I created the school joy method. And what we do as a school is we sit down and we go over the school joy method, which is outlined in my second book. And we go through and we basically create action plans. We create a roadmap as to how to make our schools more joyful. I was recently doing this with a school for the blind in New York State, and they have both a residential program and a non-residential program. And I worked with them for 3 hours, and the energy that came from working with those people for 3 hours was just, it was just catching. And the feedback that I got from them about, we can't wait to have more joy in our school, because we all want schools to be joyful. Because if you do what's best for children and what's right for children, it is going to be based on love. It's going to be based on joy, and your teachers and your leaders and your parents and all of your stakeholders are going to be happier for it.
And children that feel healthy, that have connections, they grow into happier, healthier grown-ups. And then they also become probably better parents. And we've created a cycle with the schools closing down where kids aren't getting the kind of connection they need. And that, I think, we really want to do anything we can to amplify the fun, the joy, the freedom that can happen in schools. So what is the one thing that schools can do right now to begin, or maybe a couple things to begin focusing on joy? Some of the things in your joy method.
Karen, one thing that I learned from you that I've been doing, which has made a huge difference in my life, is every morning I write down what I'm grateful for. That one little practice, which doesn't take much time, really enables me to see, no matter what's happening that's negative around me, there's so much more positive around me. So the first thing is consistently lead. If you want to have a joyful school, then you have to be the joy, right? You have to come in there and be that person of joy. Now, I know that there are situations in schools that are negative, but if you need to process that privately. But when you are public with your staff, you want to have a joyful persona, because that makes a difference. Some of the pictures that I shared with you, there are a couple of them as I was going through over the years. There were all these pictures of me getting these group hugs. And they all just happened. I walked into a room, one kid would say, Dr. Cozine, you're here. Next thing you know, I had 25 kids around me and I had to spread my feet so that I didn't get knocked over.
Mm.
And that's what I'm talking about. When you bring love and you bring joy to a school. And the
Can I,
second thing,
can
which
I,
is,
can I
yeah,
say something about that? Because like some people might not know how do you get into joy? And you did mention focusing on the things that are working, the things that are good. But another thing that brings joy that I just want to share is doing the things that you love when you're like, if you are a teacher or an administrator and you like music, bring music to your class. If you can, if you're a person who likes to dance, spend a few minutes in the morning while you're brushing your teeth grooving, like do things that actually make you feel good, so that the joy is easy to bring about. So I didn't mean to interrupt, but go ahead, tell me what else you were going to say.
no, but what I love about what you just said is that none of us are cookie cutters, right? So a principal in one school might be obviously it's different from a principal in another school, but there are things that fill our buckets or, make our souls sing. And that also is important in schools because the school really takes on the personality often of the leader. And if the leader is grumpy and miserable, that really trickles down. So consistently leading by example is important. And then the second is to orient to high expectations. You need to have high expectations in a joyful school. A joyful school isn't just, we're just running around and having a good time. No, you have high expectations because high expectations bring joy. When children can reach goals that they have in a positive way and reach academic outcomes, that's joyful. Celebrate those things. So as you orient to those high expectations, hire people who you think have really positive outlooks on life, people who are going to hold children to high standards and help them get there, high expectations for what classroom instruction looks like, high expectations for the school leader, because again, that school leader sets the tone for the organization, which is so important. And the last one I just tapped in a little bit is celebrate success. You don't need a special day to celebrate at your school. Celebrate every morning. Do you know how much children love to hear their name on the announcements? For something as simple as today is Karen Lorre's birthday. And it's like amazing. Find things to celebrate. I remember going to a conference and I wrote about it in one of my books. And the man's name escapes me right now, but what he said to me was, his name was Bob Eaker. And what he said was, children should be celebrated. Every child should be celebrated. And I decided that when I became a principal, I was going to have an awards ceremony. And I called it the PLC awards ceremony. And every month, a different student was celebrated. But it didn't have to be academic. It didn't have to be for any specific reason, but they were celebrated for who they were. And we invited the parents and they got a letter and we said, shh, don't tell, it's going to be a surprise. And I've done that in every organization that I've led since. And it's been amazing because everyone has something about them that they can celebrate. So celebrating is a very simple thing that you can do. And it costs, and almost everything in the school joy method is free. All you have to do is use yourself and the human resources that you have to make change.
I love that so much. And I love how this is something that people can do, even if you're a teacher and the administrators aren't doing it, if the leaders in the school aren't doing it, but you embody the joy, you're going to have a class that's going to emanate out and other teachers will start to follow, and maybe it catches to the leaders. It doesn't have to start. I mean, I think what you're saying is right. It's good if it starts from the top, but if you happen to be a teacher and you're not in a school where it's starting from the top, or even a student, and you want to bring in that joy, you want to be the example, that to me seems like another way to go if the leader hasn't picked it up yet, and share this with the leader, because what you're saying is so important. And also something you said about celebration. I learn languages. I like learning languages. I'm in the process of learning French better. Every single time I say a phrase right, I get the right word. There's a little app. I'm doing this little app, and it has a little character that goes, like, yay, and that continual celebration of every single thing that I learn. And that's something my mom was pretty cool teacher. And she would, oh my God, you tied your shoes. I just remember the celebration that came from that. Or, oh, my mom is Greek. So, oh, you learned this Greek word. You're saying it perfectly. And they were little tiny things. And I think if you can, what you're saying is throughout the day, when any student is kind, when any student is honest, when any student is generous, anything that is part of their nature that they're doing naturally, affectionate, sweet, cute, funny, all those things that you can celebrate that seem like, I remember a lot of times the guys who were the funniest or the girls who were the funniest in the classroom got in trouble. But if that could be celebrated, that would be amazing because it's so good to laugh, So I love what you're saying.
Well, positive reinforcement. I mean, we know that from, like you said, from children very young. Every species really, responds to positive reinforcement. So we don't need to be punitive in education. We can be positive. We can point out the positive things that kids are doing. Because think about children who, might not be the perfect student, right? They hear a lot what they do wrong. Don't get up. Why are you sharpening your pencil? At home, it's just constant. But if we can say, Theo, I love your energy. Your energy just makes me feel so happy that you have such great energy. Hold that thought for a second. Let me hear from another student. Flip the script, make it about the children and how to help them learn those techniques, learn those coping skills without having to beat them down.
Exactly. Because I really found nobody responds to punishment in a good way. People respond to being understood, and children especially, and to being praised and to being appreciated. So, for example, one of my friends, he created a show called The X-Files. His name is Chris Carter. My aunt happened to be his teacher. We didn't know that till after I was cast on the show, and I only did one episode. But when I was talking to my aunt after I'd done the show, I said, yeah, I did The X-Files. And she said, isn't Chris Carter the boy who produced the X-Files? And I said, yeah. And she said, he was my student. She was like, she smoked. She was like, he was my student, and he was Trouble. And I was like, what? But he had a lot of energy. So he was constantly looking out the window, daydreaming. And of course, he became this very successful producer and writer of a very successful show. So a lot of times things that we see as the adults where we go, oh, you shouldn't be looking out the window, you shouldn't be daydreaming, you shouldn't be squirming, all of those things are possibly things to celebrate, that somebody is focusing on something in a way that actually makes them feel better.
The reason they're squirming is their body is saying, I need to move right now.
Exactly.
So imagine you need to move and someone is holding you in a jacket. Of course, it's like being like a cat in a corner, and I think when I coach leaders, because that's another thing that I do is I'm an executive coach for district superintendents and principals. The question I often ask is when we're trying to solve a problem is this a student? Is this a child issue, or is this an adult issue? Because we need to focus on the issue with the child. So if a teacher comes in and would say to me, I'll use my son. My son's name is Theodore, by the way, Theo. I'll use that name as an example. If they say, I can't teach Theo. He's all over the place. And my response would be, well, let's talk about what Theo needs, because this really isn't about you. This is about the child, and you need to teach that child. And, when I have more difficult conversations, what I'll say is, we are only here for the children. If not for the children, we would not have jobs. So let's focus on what the child needs. And I think that we have gotten to the point in, it's been since even when I was a child, it's like these cookie cutter things. And you are absolutely right, Karen. The most successful people out there, if you look at like your friend and others, they're not cookie cutters. They're not, they're like the square trying to get into the round hole. And I have a child like that. And I say to everyone, she's going to be an amazing adult. We're going to get her there, and we have all of these kind of types of issues where she's squirmy and all those things, but she really is a great critical thinker. And when you try to change a child's physiology, like I need to move, or I need to do these things, you are really dwarfing their ability to become great creative thinkers or problem solvers. So really, my other thing that I would like to say is really focus on what the kids need. It's not about what the teachers need. I know it's a tough job, but it's about what each child in that classroom needs specifically so that he or she can be successful.
I love that. And I know you just said it's a tough job, but at least from my own experience, because I have been living in a state of joy and love for, at this point, 12 or 13 years. So what that does for me is I've been on an airplane where I'm right next to a child who's screaming, let's say, and he doesn't like perhaps the air pressure change in his ears, and he's just crying and screaming. And the mom and dad are super embarrassed and trying to control him. And I've just looked at the kid and just smiled at the kid and given that child total approval, total acceptance. And of course, the child just starts breathing better, stops crying, and becomes more relaxed. And there's something about when you're in that state of love where things that were hard become easier. When you're in that state of joy, your joy kind of carries you, sort of like, I call it like a magic carpet ride of joy. And things that seem hard now become easy. If it's authentic joy, if it's something that's really within you, it's easy to see the benefit of what somebody's doing that might not be fitting into that cookie cutter thing. So, yeah. And so what can parents and teachers and administrators and other people do to let schools know the importance of joy in schools?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is parents, I hear a lot of times parents don't know how to get involved in their school. So the first thing I want to say to parents is you are your child's first ever teacher and you know them better than your school does. And I think it's very important that as parents, you get involved in the school, even if it's as simple as, introducing yourself to the school leader and the teachers, and just say, I'm here if you need anything, or volunteer, or things like that. But I think really is asking, what are some of the things that you do in this school to make sure that children are enjoying themselves? What type of rituals and practices do you have? Like, for instance, we had a monthly awards ceremony that I mentioned, where every child would be over the course of the year, every child will be recognized. How often is my child able to, partake in creative writing, visual arts, dance, music?
I love that so much. And I would say be the one who finds the path to joy for you. Like if you're a parent and you love playing guitar and you're not playing guitar, find time to play the guitar. You'll be a better parent. If you like doing art, do the art. Just the same I was saying for the teachers, for the kids, we all need to do the things that lights us up. So I love what you're saying so much. I love this. I love the idea. Wouldn't it be fun if in the world there was a focus on schools being joyful, and if everybody was bringing you or someone like you on to say, hey, this is a way that we can really enhance teacher retention. This is a way we can enhance productivity. We can enhance engagement. We can enhance people being able to learn. They found that IQ goes up when people feel good, and it goes down when people are stressed. You don't think as well, right? Stress shuts off the prefrontal cortex. You don't have the ability to reason. So when you have this joy, I mean, I could just imagine, can you just imagine all the kids all over the world just cheering, and teachers cheering, and everybody wanting to be in their job because they love these kids and the kids love them, and teachers are getting 25 kids surrounding them in group hugs. Oh my gosh, this would be just such a beautiful world to live in. And then those kids would grow up and they would know, oh, people are friendly, people are good, I'm safe, I can love, I can be kind. I love what you're doing. I love what you're doing. I hope that your message gets out into the world. Thank you so much, Donna Marie Cozine. now that I'm understanding it. Thank you so much. I really appreciate everything you've shared. And thank you, everyone who's tuned in to Stories We Love. Stay tuned because there are more Stories We Love coming. And thank you again. And again, you can go to storiesweloveshow.com to get this show and any other shows that we've already done. Thank you so much.